Hello and welcome, friends, to our SPT Sutra Studies class. My name is Venerable Tarpa. Before we begin today's class, let's take a moment to appreciate our handsome community gathered here today. Today, I feel fortunate to sit as a member of this kind community in the safety and security of like-minded friends, sharing this present moment with others dedicated to the cultivation of goodness. Today, I'm grateful for the direction and support that this community provides, a community worthy of my time and commitment, a community where my efforts have meaning, purpose, and are appreciated. Today, I'm thankful for this community of awakening, a place to gain the knowledge and skills to improve my life, a family, a home, and a sanctuary for all of us seeking refuge from the storm. And let's remember, as conscientious practitioners, we must recognize our responsibility to the world, to strive to live skillfully while helping others to do the same, to strive to live in balance and harmony with nature and others, to strive to gain mastery over our minds and embody our true benevolent nature, to expand our hearts and minds, transcending our shared human limitations, to not intentionally harm sentient life or our planet, to maturely accept and embrace the reality of our situation while striving to improve it. Welcome again, everyone. This is our SPT Sutra Studies class. We are currently examining the Dhammapada, and today we're going to be covering Chapter 9 entitled Evil. It's a very spooky and great chapter. But before we start, I'd like to talk a little bit about the title of this. So, in my own presentation of Buddhism, and that I received at the monastery and through so many teachings by the Dalai Lama, and in my text, Tibetan Buddhist Essentials is probably a better way to say it, I give a presentation in there that Buddhism doesn't believe in evil, that the concept of evil isn't in Buddhism. And of course, this chapter clearly flies in the face of that. But there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One of them is that all of the Dhammapadas tend to be built upon earlier translations. And the first people that translated the Dhammapada were mostly religious people, and they kind of used terminology, especially in the Christian Judeo ideology, in their translations. So when we use the word evil in this chapter, I think we have to be careful of exactly what we're thinking about. So I wanted to kind of take a little bit of time to define it and address it. So in this early presentation, they're using this word, but as you probably noticed, the word is used quite differently in quite a few of the different verses. It doesn't seem to have one strong definition, right? In some ways, they're talking about it just being what was the word they used? They call it, often they talk about evil as being misfortune, right? So we don't have a strong definition of what evil is. But in later Buddhism, the idea is that we don't necessarily blame people for the characteristics or the afflictions and limitations that they have. We don't see evil people. We see people that are victims of their circumstances and their afflictions and limitations. So, in a sense, meaning that we don't blame people for their shortcomings. We hold them responsible, which we have to do. We don't blame them for them. We realize that greedy people or people that have problems with anger or violent people, the fact is that it's not them that's the evildoer or the one at hand here. It's those limitations and afflictions that we all have and that we're all trying to deal with every day of our lives. So in Buddhism, in a more modern presentation, things like criminals, evildoers, even just simple people that are hurtful towards others, Buddhism asserts that as a form of mental illness. So we don't see people as being evil or bad. We see people as being afflicted, mentally ill. And in Buddhism, probably the most famous of all stories is the story of Angulimala, who was one of the world's first recorded serial killers. He was going around killing people, and he cut off one finger from every person he killed, and he was making a necklace. And his goal was to have 1,000 fingers on his necklace, and which would be 1,000 beings that he had killed. So the story goes that he's at 999, and he's quite happy to finish his garland or necklace. And he thinks, oh, what better way to finish off my necklace than to have the Buddha's finger on my necklace, right? He wants to kill the Buddha. The Buddha's going to be the 1,000th sentient being or human being that he's killed. Anyways, the Buddha hears about this, and the Buddha sets out to meet him. And the story talks about the Buddha using some magic and overcoming Angulimala, and he subdues him and he teaches him the Dharma. But the most important part of the story is the redemption, that Angulimala goes on to become an enlightened being. He becomes a great, great being, and he gives small teachings and shares with people how we overcome these things. And so, then the reason I talk about the story is that in this case as well, that they present it as Angulimala is not necessarily evil. He's just caught up in afflictions and human limitations. In a sense, he's dealing with mental illness. But the Buddha helps him with it. The Buddha corrects his view, and so he no longer does it anymore. In Buddhism, commonly in the world, we'll define evil as immoral, malevolent is a good word, wicked, or wrongdoing. Buddhism sees the word, or let's say that Buddhism doesn't usually like to use the word evil, and instead we use terms like non-virtuous or non-neutral, because in Buddhism we have the three directions. We have virtue, non-virtue, and neutral. So it's neither it's a non-virtue, and it's also not non-neutral. Again, in this text, one of the translations, misfortune. Another one is you can think of this characteristic as harmful behavior of thought, intention, or action towards oneself or others. And I would say that in my upbringing at the monastery, the word evil was transplanted with the word non-virtuous. I also really like the idea of just calling things skillful and unskillful. And evil deeds like this are unskillful things that make the person who committed the act suffer terribly, right? So anyways, I just wanted to give a little bit of a presentation of the title itself. And I personally don't use it. And in my text, I actually say that Buddhism doesn't believe in evil. There's no evil in the Buddhist teachings. But with that said, in early scriptures, you do find it as a translation. But I still believe that it's just not an aspect of Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't see the world as good and evil. Buddhism realizes that these are aspects of human awareness. And we believe that the true nature of people is good. It's benevolent. And then mental illness of one kind or another, or afflictions, they convolute our minds, and we do things that are clearly not in our best interests. So I hope that was a little bit of help. Who do we have here? Chantel made it good. I'm looking at what readers we have today. We have Chantel. We have, maybe it's just you and me reading today. Neil will probably pitch in a little bit. And good, we got some good readers. Good to hear. And I'll pitch in as well. So, with that said, I hope everybody enjoys our classes. We just started these and we're having a lot of fun with them. I think we finally got our method down for them all. We put them on the screen here and we read them together, and then a little comment on them. If anybody has questions or comments about them all, you can raise your hand and Neil can can call on you. You can also just type your comments or questions in the chat window, and Neil could also keep me advised if there's anything I need to address. With that said, I think I'm going to start the show. We like to start with Gaden Chirpel's version because he's one of the only that organized these into when they were taught and where they were taught. So, like in this case, the first three are all taught together in Jetavana Grove, and it concerns a Brahmin. So I think I'll read the first three, and then we'll move on from there. Direct your mind towards virtue and turn your mind from wickedness. If you turn aside from the practice of virtue, the mind will look for its pleasure in sin. You may have made hundreds of mistakes in the past, but do not repeat them again and again. Do not yearn for your old ways of acting. Misery is the outcome of sin. And sin is another expression that I don't know anyone that uses that in Buddhism. So, it seems to be here in the early sutras, but I've never heard teachers refer to the word sin. It's a very Christian Judeo idea. I don't think Buddhism has it. We have non-virtue, we have unskillful behavior, but we don't have the idea of sin. And the last one here is, if your actions are producing merit, meaning good karma, repeat them again and again. Set your heart on virtue. Virtue's outcome is delight. And I could definitely attest to that. And Chantal, would you like to read 116, 117, and 118?
Sure, Tarpa. Hasten to do good, restrain your mind from evil. He who is slow in doing good, his mind delights in evil. Should a person commit evil, let him not do it again and again. Let him not find pleasure therein, for painful is the accumulation of evil. Should a person do good, let him do it again and again. Let him find pleasure therein, for blissful is the accumulation of good.
Oh, you're such a good reader. Neil, can I get you to read 116, 117, and 118?
Be quick to do good, restrain your mind from evil. When one is slow to make merit, one's mind delights in evil. Having done something evil, don't repeat it. Don't wish for it. Evil piled up brings suffering. Having done something
meritorious,
repeat it. Wish for it. Merit piled up brings happiness.
Oh, really well said. So as you can tell, quite a few of these verses are very straightforward. So, the Buddha, they say that the first thing the Buddha taught was what's to be cultivated and what's to be refrained from, or what's to be cultivated and what's to be abandoned. And that's what they're talking about here, that we want to do only good, do no evil, purify the mind. But they're also asserting in these that, sometimes evil might look good, but it always brings suffering, and there's just great delight in virtue, and it always brings delight with it. Quite a few of these, I don't think they need much commentary, so I'm gonna not add much. The evildoer may appear to be good before the harmless act matures, but when the deed has ripened, then the wicked are revealed. And you can tell these are kind of in pairs. They'll often say the opposite or a similar thing to a different topic. The good may appear to be evil before the good act matures, but when the deed is ripened, then the good are revealed. I found these two very mysterious and provocative. I wasn't quite sure what to do with them. I think the Gil Fronsdale's verse really helps to clarify it. Let's move on to the next one. Chantal, would you like to read
just before you do that, Kylie's got something in the chat that I think is very, very relevant.
Please.
You want me to read it? Okay.
Oh, or Neil could read it. I can't view that with the other things up.
Yeah, there's a little conversation about what the meanings of certain words are.
Sure.
In Pali, the word used for both evil and sin here is papa.
That's right.
It's a word directly taken from Sanskrit, where it does mean evil, sinful, or wicked. Of course, in Buddhism, we can understand it in different contexts. In one version, somewhere evil was translated as mischief. Papa in Sanskrit also sometimes translated as inauspicious, which may be a little more in line with the meaning here.
Yeah, and Gil Fronsdale in the notes talks about the term being closer to misfortune. But again, you can't use the same words to define a word. So we can't say evil is evil. And so anyways, I think a lot of the early translations are inappropriate. So, but we leave that to each one of us. But thank you, everybody, for the information. Very helpful indeed. Okay. Okay, so we got that done. Chantal, would you like to read? What are we on? I'm sorry, I'm losing track. 119 and 120. Would you like to read those for us, Chantal?
It may be well with the evildoer as long as the evil ripens not. But when it does ripen, when the evildoer sees the painful results of his evil deeds. It may be ill with the doer of good as long as the good ripens not. But when it does ripen, then the doer of good sees the pleasant results of his good deeds.
Thank you very much. And Neil, would you like to read 19 and 20? I think that's what we have, yeah.
Even an evildoer may see benefit as long as the evil has yet to mature. But when the evil has matured, the evildoer will meet with misfortune. A doer of good may meet evil fortune as long as the good has yet to mature. But when the good has matured, the doer of good will meet with good fortune.
I found these quite deep and quite complicated to understand. The first presentation with Gaydon Schiphel puts it in the second person, talking about the evildoer. Their actions are harmful. Like you're watching them. It's an objective opinion. But in the other two translations, it's talking about his actions are more about him suffering, right? It seems to be more subjective. So I thought that was quite interesting. And I think Gil Fronsdale, his presentations are probably the clearest. And so, but to understand what that means, I guess we have some of those expressions in the West, like what's that expression? The road to heaven is paved with, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So as far as my thoughts on it goes, I think that that's what they're trying to get to here, is just because we start things off with good intentions, it doesn't necessarily, if we're not watching ourselves, they very much can end in non-virtuous activity, and the opposite. Maybe we start things in non-virtuous ways, and we change the way we look at something, change our attitude, and we can turn them into virtuous ones. Does anyone want to comment on those two? I didn't feel like I had a lot to say
I have
about
a
them.
question. Harper, could you comment a little bit on the idea of good and evil ripening or maturing?
Yeah, so that has a lot to do with the idea of karma, is that they often talk about karma as karmic seeds. So you commit an action, you might not get the result of that action right away, right? You get on your iPhone, you start talking about the lady your friend down the street, saying all kinds of bad things. You might not get the results as soon as you hang up the phone. But at some point, when she gets around to hearing it, we talk about that, like your karma ripens, and then the result comes to fruition. So that's how karma is seen. And you can imagine in many things we do, you can commit the action and not get the result right away, whether the result's good or bad. So there's a distinction between that.
Papa,
Hope that's, yeah.
Kelly's put in the chat, the last verse sounds like the redemption of Ebenezer Scrooge to me. Very timely.
Yeah, doesn't it though? It sounds like the Christmas story, right? Yeah, but I think that's basically the point of it, yeah. But I just didn't feel like I had a lot of clarity. There should be some examples you can give for that, but I just didn't have any. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read 121 and 22. Do not think lightly of evil. If you think, what harm is this in this? Surely no harm will come upon me. Consider how a water jar is filled by falling drops of water. The fool becomes filled with depravity, accumulating little by little. And this one goes along with it. Do not think lightly of merits, of virtue or good karma. If you think, what benefits in this? Surely no merit will come to me. Consider how the water jug is filled by water, falling drops of water, and so the wise accumulate merit or virtue, accumulating little by little. Chantal, would you like to read these two?
Think not lightly of evil, saying, it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the fool, gathering it little by little, fills himself with evil. Think not lightly of good, saying it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise man, gathering it little by little, fills himself with good.
Oh, lovely. Neil, would you like to read 121 and 122?
Don't disregard evil thinking. It won't come back to me. With dripping drops of water, even a jug of water is filled. Little by little, a fool is filled with evil. Don't disregard merit thinking. It won't come back to me. With dripping drops of water, even a jug of water is filled. Little by little, a sage is filled with merit.
Oh, thank you. So clearly, these two verses are talking about us being diligent and vigilant in watching what we cultivate and what we abandon. And it's also referring, it's talking about habits here, that, even small virtues, we get used to small non-virtues that we get in the habit of doing, thinking nothing of them. They turn into habits, and those habits get stronger, and those habits lead to other habits. And I think we all know about that. That's lovely. Let's read 123. Completely avoid all wrongdoing, just as a wealthy merchant with few companions avoids a dangerous road, and just as those who love life avoid poison. Chantal, would you like to read that?
Sure. Think not lightly of good.
Oh, 1 second. I have the wrong one. It's 123. Thank you.
Just as a trader with a small escort and great wealth would avoid a perilous route, or just as one desiring to live avoids poison, Even so should one shun evil.
Thank you. And Neil, would you like to read 123?
As a merchant carrying great wealth in a small caravan avoids dangerous road, as someone who loves life avoids poison, so should you avoid evil deeds.
Oh, that's lovely. And so these verses really apply to the fact that it's important to develop a real clarity into just how harmful a lot of the non-virtuous things that we do can cause, especially things like anger and greed. And as we practice and we become more virtuous, we start to really see how destructive our afflictions and our limitations can be. You know, there's that old saying that the most destructive thing in the universe is the human mind, and the most benevolent, wonderful thing in all of existence is the human mind. So it's a powerful thing. But in practice, when you become really clear about the ramifications and the damage that can be done through our negativities, through our greed, through our destructive qualities, then it makes it a lot easier to set those aside and try to transcend those. But if you don't understand that, if you're in the habit of just being an angry person and not really thinking much comes of it, I'm just being angry, then chances are you'll continue to do it. But especially in like insight meditation, when you really start to get a glimpse of what damage you're doing every day and how you're hurting others, then it really helps us to transcend that. And feel free to comment as much as you'd like, or give us some definitions of words. I kind of have my hands full doing all this. And let's move on to 124, spoken at the Bamboo Grove. When your hands are free of cuts, you can handle poison safely. Poison will not enter where there's not a break. If you do nothing wrong, you will do no harm. That's quite pretty, huh? Oh, and I'm on 20. Let's see if I can keep track of the numbers. 24, Chantel.
If on one hand there is no wound, one may carry even poison in it. Poison does not affect one who is free from wounds. For him who does no evil, there is no ill.
Thank you. And Neil, 24 starts on up there.
A hand that has no wounds can carry poison. Poison does not enter without a wound. There are no evil consequences for one who does no evil.
Yeah, so this verse points at two things. One of them is that when we commit non-virtues, it opens a door for more non-virtues to arise. And the other thing it does, it talks to us, it helps us to understand our practice, our training, and our vows more. So for those in our community who have taken refuge vows or bodhisattva vows, or for other people who might just follow the 10 virtuous acts, the idea is that they're always referred to as something that protects us. And some people may think, well, how do vows protect us? And this verse explains it thoroughly, that when we have a strong virtuous base and we're really anchored in our virtues and our virtuous behavior, which our precepts exemplify, then they protect us by not letting things get in. I can tell you a short story that's quite interesting. Because I'm no longer in India at the monastery, when some of the monks back at the monastery make big mistakes on their vows, they might break an important vow. They're supposed to confess it to a senior monk, fully ordained senior monk, which I am. So often I'll get phone calls because they know that if they can confess it to me, nobody back home will hear about their their wrongdoings. And I'm very happy to do it. But we had a monk, a friend, who confessed to me that he had intercourse. He had broken his vow of celibacy. A young monk, a good monk, and but he was in a wrong situation. He explained it to me, and he didn't have anywhere to stay. And a woman offered to put him up, and he was going to sleep on the floor. And everything seemed okay, but of course, in the middle of the night, things changed. And I tried to get him to understand where the real trouble began. And he goes, "Well, yeah, I broke my vow." And I said, "No, the real problem began when you broke your first vow, that you're not supposed to share a room with someone of the opposite sex." And the point being is that in ours, small vows lead to the breaking of small vows leads to the breaking of larger vows. Just like in this sense here, that if you're very virtuous and very free of afflictions, you can be put into a situation that's difficult and still be protected from it. Anyways, that's what came to mind when I read those. And let's read number 125. Whoever harms the harmless or oppresses the innocent and just is like a fool tossing dust into the wind, his wrongdoing will fly back in his face. Okay. Chantal, would you like to read? Is it 25? Yeah.
Like fine dust thrown against the wind, evil falls upon that fool who offends and of pure and guiltless man.
Oh, yes, thank you. And Neil, 25, 125.
Like fine dust thrown against the wind, evil comes back to the fool who harms a person who is innocent, pure, and embellished.
What do you guys think this whole verse is about? There's a word I can't quite remember. What do you guys think? Starts with a K. What do you think? Is anybody guessing, Neil? We get any hands up?
Not yet.
Ends with an A. Maybe if we give away something, they'll participate. For a toaster from my cousin's kitchen.
Kelly's the first to get it. Karma.
Oh, Kelly's so smart. Thank you, Miss Kelly. Yeah, that's just a commentary on karma, right? That what your actions do, and they color your life, and they often come back in the same way. Sopa wanted us to do a class on karma tomorrow. Maybe we should do that. Let's do 126. Some will be reborn from a womb. Those who do wrong will be reborn in hell. Those who do good will pass to the highest realms. Those who destroy all impurities will pass from sorrow. Chantal, I'm giving Chantal all the hard ones to read because she's a really good reader.
Some are born in the womb, the wicked are born in hell. The devout go to heaven, the stainless pass into nirvana.
Oh, which one are you going to, Chantal?
Nirvana.
Yeah, of course you are. I'm going to write your ticket. Neil, would you like to read 126?
Some are reborn in a womb. Evildoers are reborn in hell. People of good conduct go to heaven. Those without toxins are fully released into nirvana.
Yeah, so this is a traditional presentation of the six realms of existence in Buddhism. Starting at the bottom, we have hell realms, and then ghost realms, animal realm, human realm, demigod, fighting god realm, and then the heaven realms. Remember, they're all still in samsara. So even in the heaven realm, if you're born a god, it might be pleasant, but sooner or later you will transmigrate down into one of the other realms. So a Buddha is the only being that can go to nirvana, which bypasses all of these things. He's freed from those six. And of course, to be reborn in a womb, I think they're referring here to human beings, but of course, animals could as well. As a secular group, I don't. I personally don't have a belief in the six realms. Remember, SBT, we don't teach beliefs. That's up to individuals. We teach what the Buddha taught and things like this. It's up to you whether you want to believe in those things or not. I can't honestly tell you which one is which. It's just not part of my belief system. Thank you. 127. Where can we go where our sins will not touch us? No place on earth, no place at all. Not in the sky, not in the midst of the sea, not in the rocky cliffs of mountains, or clefts, not cliffs. And Chantal, number 27. Oh, actually, Miss Chantal, let's read these together because these are basically the same. Number 128. Where on this earth will death not touch us? No place on earth, no place at all. Not in the sky, not in the midst of the sea, not in the rocky clefts of mountains. And Miss Chantal, you can read 27 and 28.
Neither in the sky nor in mid-ocean, nor by entering into mountain clefts, nowhere in the world is there a place where one may escape from the results of evil deeds. Neither in the sky, nor in mid-ocean, nor by entering into mountain clefts, nowhere in the world is there a place where one will not be overcome by death.
It's true. Neil, would you like to end us off with 27 and 28?
You will not find a spot in the world, not in the sky, not in the ocean, not inside a mountain cave, where you'll be free from your evil karma. You will not find a spot in the world, not in the sky, not in the ocean, not inside the mountain cave, where death will not overtake you.
Thank you. And in 127, I would say this is translated as evil karma, but the fact is all karma, right? Your good karma also you'll never be, you're not freed from. So there's a little bit of a positive take on that. But that's the idea of karma. They often talk about karma being like your shadow, that, the things you do in life and the actions that we commit are like ripples in a pond, and they're inescapable. They always generally, there are some ways of purifying karma and things to at least lessen the impact of them. But just generally speaking of non-practitioners, the actions they have are creating ripples in their lives, and they all come back in different ways. And I think we should do a teaching on karma tomorrow because we have so much here. I'd love to clarify it. Now I'll save other comments for that. And then 128, of course, is an old Buddhist concept that death comes to all of us. There's no escaping it. What we can do is we can prepare for it, and we can learn to die skillfully and live good lives as we go through life, right? So, would anybody any comments out there? Any questions?
You've got a couple of comments in the chat, Pat. Kelly has wrote, the word for heart here is Nirvana, which is usually translated as hellish realms or just hell. But looking at the Sanskrit gives the insight. In the Sanskrit, aya is happiness. So Naraya is without happiness. Chantal has put, I'm reminded of this chapter how the use of language determines one's perception inauspiciously instead of evil, non-virtuous instead of evil, etc. David has put, I don't know if I believe in karma.
Very good. Kelly, thank you for that. And it's so true. The littlest change in language completely changes our attitude and our perception of teachings, don't they? And and clearly Buddhism has a great history, a transmigration from these simpler forms and these simpler terms. And again, you look up a word like evil in a dictionary, even a Buddhist dictionary, where you have to question where the translations from the dictionary came from. The earliest translations and dictionaries that I've seen in Buddhism, they were often written by missionaries, and they were written by religious people in other traditions. They were written by Christian mystics. So I think it's safe to translate them in terms that work for us. There's another thing, that there's a big difference between interpretation and translation. Translations are very limited. I wish I had a good example, but there's words that we use in English that we use every day, and it has a certain meaning. But if you were to look it up in a dictionary, it could have an older meaning. Maybe ego is a great example. We use ego for narcissism and for self-centeredness and all kinds of qualities, right? But if you were new to English and you looked it up in a text, in a dictionary, you might get the Freudian version of ego, which is more closely related to ideology, or identity. So this is the problem with translation. Interpretation is a higher level of understanding. So interpretation is you've read that, and interpreters are a much higher source of clarity. They've read the dictionary, they know what that is, but they've also read thousands and thousands of texts and been the teachings, and they understand that term in the context it was used, not just in a formal definition or by looking at its roots, right? If we look at ego and we go to its root form of what it means, it could have absolutely nothing to do with how we're actually using the word. So with all of the words that we're defining within this, I rely more on the interpretations that I've heard of all of these various teachings of the Dalai Lama and all the greats of the world. And so it's better to get a consensus of what terms are than to hang on to definitions from dictionaries. When you look at great translators and interpreters like Bhikkhu Bodhi and others, and you look at all their various interpretations, and then you combine them all for your own understanding, I think that's when we get the most precise understanding. So I'm comfortable with the way SBT is defining some of these terms. I'm comfortable that I never use the word evil or sin. I don't think they actually exist in Buddhism. I don't think the Buddha saw things like that. I think he saw people just again like the story of the lotus garden, that all people are arising from the mud, but they're all at different stages of opening. So that's my my take on it. But of course, the definitions are very valuable, and please keep them coming. And David, I don't know if I believe in karma. It depends on what you think karma is. So many different Buddhist traditions have really different takes on karma. Some see karma as just so directly related to rebirth. Stephen Batchelor rejects karma. When I sat with him and we talked about it, I shared the interpretation of Sarah J. Monastery, and he said, "Oh, I could be good with that definition." My understanding of karma is that it's cause and effect when related to sentient life, right? So cause and effect can be many things. It could be planetary rotations. It could be weather. It's just certain causes produce certain results. It could be chemistry. But karma is different. Karma is related to a mind, and only a mind can produce or experience the results of karma. So it's a very specific type of cause and effect. And so the example is, David, you come out of your seaside Scotland home and you decide, today I'm going to punch all my neighbors in the nose. And you go around and you just whack them all. You give them a good whacking. Well, guess what? The results might not come back right away. The first couple of neighbors might just go in and lock their door. But I bet sooner or later you're going to get punched back in the nose yourself. And so that's kind of the idea of karma from where I come from. It's the fact that all things have a cause. And when we do things, it's like throwing that pebble in the pond. All the things we do create ripples, and those ripples interact with other people's karma. But we don't see karma as absolute in SPT. We see karma as probable potentiality. It's the probable outcome of events. You'll probably be punched in the nose by one of those neighbors. Like the butterfly effect, but with karma. Thank you, Libby. She's so smart. Does that help, David? I still don't think I believe in karma.
Well, sometimes people go on forever, doing bad things, and they don't never have anything bad happen to them. And the same thing with good people that never do anything bad, they have bad things happen to them. So, I don't know if karma's real to me or if it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, and traditional Buddhism would say, well, maybe they were good in a past life. My thought is that on the surface level, it might look like that, but maybe when you dig into it, you actually see that that person's pretty miserable, that he might have a big house and nice things, but maybe he doesn't sleep so good at night because of all the miserable things he did. Maybe nobody loves him for it. And, but you're right, it's complicated. It does seem like there's some really good people that bad things happen to, but I think it's quite complicated to just give it a quick overview and say, well, then that would mean that there isn't karma. Remember, karma is just the fact of cause and effect, that the things you do create results. So it's complex, yeah.
Kelly's got an interesting comment about karma in the chat, Tapa.
Yeah. Understanding of karma is imbalance or debt, or the opposite, right? Many actions that we do incur a debt. I don't think Buddhism sees it that way. It's more of instead of a debt, it's something that we're paying out. We're doing something. You push a snowball, and the results are it just rolls down that hill. I think Buddhism sees it more like that. Minimizes. Actually, your view is a lot more like the Jains. And the practice of Dharma minimizes the action that will cause imbalance. Yeah, this is very much like Jainism, which is quite fascinating. Jains try not to create any karma, either good or bad. They believe all karma weighs you down and stops you from gaining liberation. But I think Buddhism it's more related to virtuous and non-virtuous results from your actions. Being debt-free is nirvana. Yeah, very Jain. Yeah, but I don't believe this isn't a Buddhist take. Buddhism asserts good karma to be beneficial for attaining nirvana. So we want to be free of negative karma, but we want to have an abundance of good karma. Like the butterfly, I'm just reading through some notes. I don't believe in karma either, but good is my own reward, and so is evil. Yeah, but again, if you, I think cause and effect is almost impossible to deny, right? When you look at the way life works, I think from chemical reactions in a lab to the way we live our lives, cause and effect is a real thing. Anything you do nearly everything we do produces a result of some kind. You say something kind to someone, there's a result. You say something nasty, there is a result. So in my understanding of karma, it's just that, but when we're talking about sentient life, because the human mind has an ability to hold on to that karma. And the human mind, we call them karmic imprints, and the human mind holds on to those in the form, there's a residue from our experiences in the form of emotion. So when you do something good and you feel proud of yourself and you feel good about it, you hold that within you as a karmic imprint. And what that does is it further colors your perception and interpretation of life. And likewise, when you do something nasty, you feel bad about it. Well, all the things that you see through your eyes on life are colored by that. And you might be more angry, you might be more impatient with people. And so I think that that's pretty hard to deny if we see it in that way. Thank you, Kelly. But how about we do a teaching on karma tomorrow? Would that be fun? Because there's a bunch of stuff to teach, and maybe we can get David to believe in it. I'm just kidding. I don't care what anybody believes. We just share the Dharma, and we're agnostic, by the way. We understand how things change. So I only teach what I know. I don't teach what I believe. We don't tell people what to believe, what to think, or what to do. I have full confidence each one of you can figure that out on your own. We're just here to help, right? Okay. We're talking and talking. Let's get to our concluding thoughts. So just a couple thoughts that I write down. I try to kind of summarize things. So we have this, throughout this chapter, it keeps coming back to this phrase, this verse from the Dhammapada, which we're going to see in a couple chapters. Do no evil, engage in only good, purify your mind. This is the teachings of the Dharma. I found something, Gil Fransdale has a great interpretation. Doing no evil, engaging in what's skillful. I love that term, skillful. Purifying one's mind, that's a teaching of the Buddha. Buddhaghosa translates it as to avoid all evil, to cultivate good, to cleanse the mind. Lovely thought of that. But often when we talk about positive, negative karma, I like to think of skillful and unskillful actions, right? Unskillful actions that don't produce the results we want, and skillful actions that produce what we want, which is to flourish and to be happy. And also the chapter is talking about if you don't embrace goodness, the mind will find its way to evil. This is, and this was in the first verses of the chapter. This is something we didn't talk about that I thought was quite fascinating, that they imply that, what's the old Christian saying that idle hands are the devil's playground, right? If you don't keep busy and stick with virtuous things, chances are you're going to find evil things, and boredom is the gateway to non-virtue. And maybe there's some truth to it. Those have been around for a long time, those sayings. And also try not to fall into habits of harmful behavior, which lead to suffering. There's quite a bit of that notion that runs through there, that to be vigilant about watching for harmful behaviors, and also habitual harmful behaviors. Actively strive to develop habits of virtuous, skillful behavior, which lead to happiness. And the Dalai Lama is very big on saying that so much of our qualities are habits, including our good ones. We can develop habits of virtue, and you can imagine that's kind of nice that you don't have to think about it. You're just in the habit of doing the right thing, of being kind, of being friendly, and being forgiving. So that's what we're trying to cultivate. We have to be vigilant in discerning virtue from non-virtue. This was very important to the Buddha, that people knew exactly what we're talking about needs to be cultivated, and exactly what he's talking about is what needs to be abandoned. For often virtuous acts may at first appear non-virtuous, and non-virtuous acts may appear first to be virtuous. And Maybe an example would be a parent who's strict with their child. And you might think, oh, they're being very aggressive and mean to the child. But then you see that indeed they're doing because they love the child and protecting the child. Take even the smallest non-virtues seriously. This is something they always say to monks, because they easily lead to patterns of behavior. Guard against patterns of non-virtuous behavior. Take even the smallest virtues seriously, because they easily become patterns of virtue. So don't discount those little small kind things you do. They lead to patterns of virtuous behavior. Develop great clarity and understanding into the harm caused by the smallest of non-virtuous deeds. This is very important. By keeping our ethics and precepts pure, there is no place for non-virtue to creep in. So this is one of the reasons we want to stay strong on our vows. Those of you that hold vows of precepts, this is why we recite them every morning, to make sure there's no cracks in there for the poisons to seep in. The results of our deeds follow us like our shadow. Both the virtuous results as well as the non-virtuous results. So they usually say it in the terms of your non-virtues. So it sounds like your evil deeds are creeping up behind you everywhere you go, but they never talk about your virtuous deeds following you like your shadow, propping you up, right? I think it's a lovely idea. And lastly, similarly, there is no place that one can escape death, right? Our deeds follow us like a shadow, and because they're ingrained in our identity and our, what we call in Buddhism, our mental factors. These are the result from our karma, flavors our perception or interpretation of the world, and therefore changes the flavor of our attitudes and our intentions and our patterns, and then we perceive that as reality and we act through those things. We'll talk a lot about that tomorrow. Does anyone have any questions before we end today's lovely talk? Okay, with that said, I'd like everybody to remember that the Sutra teachings are meant as practice instructions. So in order to get the greatest benefit, we need to engage fully with them, utilizing the three great objectives of study, contemplation, and meditation. Your work this week is to discover how these teachings apply to your daily life, transforming them from words on a page into living Dharma. And I think for this week, it's about looking in great subtlety at our actions and our good and bad actions, and seeing the subtlety of the things we do, and becoming more aware of exactly what we do is what's virtuous and exactly which isn't virtuous. And in SBT and a lot of our texts, we clearly identify which is which, so you can do some study on that, and try to create those habits of virtuous behavior this week, which includes taking vows. That's exactly why we take vows of precepts, to habituate those qualities and to make them sturdy and solid within us. Next week, we'll be moving on to chapter 10 of the Dhammapada and the chapter of violence, which I haven't read yet, but it sounds quite fascinating. And so let's end today's class with our altruistic affirmation. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well. May all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is a source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Oh, I got through it. Did you enjoy the class? It was a good class, huh? Yeah, I got a lot out of it. Yeah, important stuff. Thanks everybody for joining me. Hey, tomorrow we have an open class, and we're going to be, at the same time, we're going to be teaching on karma. Everybody's welcome to come and bring your questions with you. It's just going to be a loose, fun class. since we're between programs. And also we have daily meditations, and everybody's invited to come to that. Thank you for our instructors for their wonderful reading. We have some great SBT instructors. And we'll see everybody tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tarpa.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Dharma.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
You're
Tarpa.
welcome.
Come on,
Bye-bye.
friends. Bye.
Anytime. See ya. Bye. You're welcome.